Welcome to the Excel introduction page. One of the most important parts of being a good financial modeler is to be fast. Without speed, it's going to be very difficult for you to efficiently work with Excel and input all the data that you need. One of the most important ways of doing this is to be able to use the keyboard effectively. So as you can see here, I have an Excel workbook open with some Excel shortcuts. If you hit the Alt button, it brings up the ribbon. Now, if you start to look at the different letters and numbers there, they guide you through the process of navigating the ribbon without having to use the keyboard, without having to use the mouse. For example, that just brought up the highlight cell function. So I'm going to do that again to show you how it works. If I go over the cell N5, I hit Alt, H, and then I want to highlight it in a standard color. I can use the arrow keys to navigate, and it is now done. Then another important shortcut is Control Z. That undoes it. So also Control S brings up the save function. F12 brings up the save as function. As you can see here, when you're going to have multiple tabs, you can use Control Page Up. So I just created a new sheet. Control Plus will insert or delete a row. So watch this. Now what I just did there was I hit Control Shift and the right arrow key. I can Control Z to undo that again. Control plus the spacebar will highlight a column. Shift plus the spacebar highlights a row. Control A highlights the entire spreadsheet. Control Up goes to the nearest cell that has characters in it. Control Home goes to cell A1. Holding Shift highlights various cells. Control 1 brings up the Format Cells screen. This is very important when you're trying to guide people through information and to make a page look as cosmetic as possible. Control C copies. Control V pastes. Now Control V brings up paste. There are other ways of bringing up paste special. For example, you hit Control C to copy and then Alt ES, and that brings up all the choices. There are 2 or 3 of these choices that you'll be using most often in financial modeling, and I'll explain the most important ones in the following part of this lecture. With this list in mind, I wanted to show you some of the more important functions here. So, as you're all familiar with, you can use either equals or plus to do an equation in Excel. For example, if I do plus 2 plus 2, I get 4. Or I can do 2 here, 2 here, and then highlight the cells. Now, to show you how paste special works, let's do the following. If I were to take this formula and do Control C to copy it, and then go down a few spaces and do Control V, as you can see, I get 0. This is what's called a dynamic formula. That means that all of these cells are flowing. Now, in order to copy just the value, meaning just the 4, not the formula, I would do Control C, and then I would do Alt E S, and I would do values. Now, as you can see, that copied the 4. However, that's not how we usually work in Excel. We usually want to be able to copy a full formula. I'll demonstrate how this works in dynamic formulas in the next section. In this section, I'm going to demonstrate some very important functions in Excel. So let's say that we have $100 in annual recurring numbers, and it grows at 10%. In Excel, we do something called formula locking, and this is also going to be related to how I show you a demonstration of some of the copy and paste functions. So in year zero, we have nothing. Then we go to year one, and then we can do +1 for each year. Let's go out to 10 years. Now, if in year zero, we have to hard code one of the numbers. So we're going to say that the 100 is our assumption, and assumptions usually get coded in blue. And the 10% growth rate is also going to be our assumption. Rent, growth rate. Now, year zero, we have $100 rent. Then in year one, we grow it out. Now, watch what happens. What I did was I used the active cell function to highlight the 100. Now, if I want to grow that by 10%, you multiply it by 1 plus the 10%, correct? But watch what the problem is. I'm going to do Control-C, and I want it to grow out all the way, right? Not happening. Why is it not growing? This is how Excel's default functions work. It's dynamic, so everything moves. To show you this cell, I'm pressing F2. Watch what happens now. If I highlight cell C3 there, press F4, and then I drag it out. Now, I'm growing by 10% every year. Let's also play around with some of the formatting. So these are supposed to be years, right? Now, if I highlight all of these cells and I press Control-1, I can go down to do some custom formatting. And watch what happens. Now, as you can see, every single one of these says year, so I know that it's the year. But it's a functional number. As you can see in the formula bar up top, it's still a 1. Now, these numbers should also be in dollar format. So we're going to hit currency number. And then I don't want to show any change. I just want to show whole dollars. So I'm going to decrease the decimal points. This is a fairly basic introduction to what the most important points in copying and pasting in Excel will be.